um increase in behavior, out of control adolescent that is basically running around trying to be a rebel or one of those sorts of things. And they never understood that trauma is one of those situations that someone can show signs of it right away, or it may take up to years for them to show signs and symptoms of trauma. So we start right off right there, just trying to get some background information as much as possible that we can get. Some trauma doesn't have to be because of a loss. It can be environmental, it can be generational. We have even going into relationship traumas. Traumas is anything that affects you in an emotional way where you can't understand the process of what's going on internally, that it ends up messing with the neurological balance in your brain. To just break it down somewhat. So, and everybody has their right to undergo trauma at any point. Some of us have that normal trauma anxiety where we'll get through it real fast, and then some things just stay with us and resonates with us for a long time. And when it resonates with us, clearly we need healing from it.
Absolutely, we do. And again, everything that you stated is so necessary. We need to understand the steps of getting someone from that place of traumatic disturbance, that's what I would call it, to a place. You said neurological. Explain that as well. I want people to understand this is something going on in the mind of an individual. You said that, but I don't want that to just be something that people will just let run by them. Explain that more because you work really a lot in that area,
Yeah, so
identifying the youth.
it's funny that you bring it up because I started a seminar called Traumatic Brain Injury versus Trauma Care for the parents, because I was telling the parents like your child is going through a mental impairment, and the parents wouldn't understand or couldn't understand what was going on. So I basically, this is an original seminar I put to pieces together, and I walk them through the journey of how someone becomes mentally impaired through the neurological process, how the traumatic event first happened, how we don't process it sometimes right away, or sometimes we process it right away, and walking them through what them signs and symptoms may look like on the outwards, in children, how depression doesn't perceive itself as sleepiness and and not eating or something like that. Depression sometimes in children may look like outbursts of physical violence or increase in temper tantrums, and or sometimes always claim to be sick and needing to go to the hospital a lot. So I walk the parents through that neurological process and breaking it down on the key components on signs and symptoms, and then the outward, what comes out of it, which is something big called, PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder. And can it be mild, moderate or severe PTSD? And then out of that comes mental illnesses, as far as anxiety, panic attacks, things that's associated with the post traumatic stress disorder. People think all of it goes under mental illness. It doesn't. These three things go under trauma itself, and then we have things that come out of the trauma component into the mental illness component. So one child can be diagnosed with multiple things. I don't diagnose or treat. I mean, I don't diagnose or treat the symptoms. I just teach the parents on how to identify those symptoms.
This is great information that we need to know. And I love that you're very wow. I'm blown away by the work that y'all do, but I'm stuck on how you had to explain each step, the process of it. There's mental impairment, that's post-traumatic disorder. You spoke about behaviors. All of the things that you said is so necessary for a parent to be able to identify and assist their child appropriately. So, and I love that you also stated that you don't diagnose, you just identify the student or the youth, and help their parents along. So one thing that we know throughout the world, that a lot of times we gear or focus toward either parenting or we focus on the youth. But at your ministry, Saving Grace Ministries, you guys work together collectively, collaboratively with the family unit itself. So share with you guys, share with the audience, what is it that you guys do to assist through this process and how everyone is involved in the process?
So my key role through the process of at Saving Grace Ministries is that I'm a special needs advocate and I'm a juvenile care coordinator. I do both. Both of them actually mimic each other because if a child is through the JCC, 9 times out of 10 they suffered a mental impairment. Mental impairment falls under the Special Needs Education Act or a Special Needs Act itself under a federal law. So when I go in to adjust either the educational setting or the family dynamics at home, both of them fall under the same category. So I come in as a special needs advocate. I try to take my focus off of the parents. I feel like the parents already did enough trying to control the situation at home. I don't want to put more on the parent than what they already experienced or have been experiencing. So I focus strictly on the child. I I basically sit back and observe what is the child actually doing at that point in time, trying to gain a safe place with the actual child, trying to see if I can even come in and engage with that child to try to get the child to open up to tell me anything that may have been traumatic to them and hurted them to so I can be able to identify what's going on with the child. And if I don't get to open it up, I still know that they suffering from a mental impairment. So I go inside the educational setting. I speak to anybody I need to speak to. It's more importantly the child study team, asking the child studies team to evaluate this child on the mental impairment. It is under a federal law for them and stated for them to do this. I basically put into a letter stating that I understand it is a time sensitive of 20 days for them to respond back to me and get this all in place. I go over to the school and I sit inside the child study team meetings, advocating on behalf of this child, letting, making sure that everything is written correctly. I also add safety plans because if a child is mentally impaired, when they go inside a school and they have outlashing behaviors, they like to call the police and that sets them up for pipeline to prison and is more traumatic once they get into the juvenile justice system. So I try to keep them away from the juvenile justice system and have more people involved that are against them than for them. So I create a safety plan in place that whatever it states, if whatever sometimes I talk to the parent, okay, do they call you? Do they call us? Saving Grace Ministries. We come up to the school, we remove the child from the school setting, we take the child, we do another evaluation to see where they're at that time. If they're manic, we may take them to crisis, we may not. We may just increase on their trauma therapy at that time. Just trying to get a place for the child, a safe place for the child at that point. If and I basically just do a lot of paperwork, following behind the child, making sure that I keep a paper trail, because if a child is not getting the services they needed, then their civil rights have been revoked, and if their civil rights have been revoked, then we have a federal lawsuit on our hands.
Oh my goodness, this wow, this is valuable information. And
So I set it all up and get it all ready for the lawyers, basically. Like, if I
exactly,
have to go to that
exactly.
status, then I already did all the work basically for the lawyer, setting the gap, and got all the work ready for the lawyer. And then there is lawyers, civil, of course, rights lawyers
Yes.
that will come in place and will actually, um, go in and sue the Board of Education for failure and neglect to supervise a child within the school setting. That's one of the laws. Yes. It's
Wow.
also child abuse and neglect as well.
This is amazing, but it's necessary. It is
It's
so good
necessary
that you
to
guys
shape
have
up
everything in place.
the educational setting and to keep
Yes.
on creating a safe place for the child to be able to thrive.
And that's the goal. That's the goal,
It's
to
the
get
goal
that child to that safe place,
to
assist the child
thrive
and
beyond
thrive.
trauma. To
Yes,
thrive beyond
yes.
trauma.
Beyond, say that again. To strive
Yeah,
beyond the
to
trauma,
thrive beyond
thrive
trauma.
beyond the trauma. That is great.
Mhm.
So, with that being said, I want to go back and reiterate what you said. You're in constant contact with the parents. you
The
observe the
school
child
system.
and through the
Hmm.
school system, and you try to find solutions. You don't identify this child to just label them and then leave them in the crisis state. You walk them through. So you guys offer therapeutic services, you do evaluations, and so you can be able to assist that child with getting them the proper care that they need.
Yes, trauma informed care. Trauma informed
Trauma
care.
informed
Everything
care.
is trauma
Wow.
focused. Everything is
Trauma
trauma focused
focus.
that we do.
And
Hmm.
that's amazing, because I've seen youth even within my own home. I've seen my son go through things, and there was nothing in place in the school systems for what you have spoke of. There was no one that was really doing type of evaluations to see. And even as a parent, we shared that there was trauma, but there was no system in place like what you guys have in Camden, New Jersey. So here in Texas, I would love to see this type of plan be implemented to assist parents. I know a lot of parents whose children have had traumatic experiences, and there was no system in place like this, where you care to this extent to go into the school systems, work hand in hand with the parents and the school to do appropriate evaluations, and then provide therapeutic services to get that child out of crisis. You said so they can thrive, to become
Beyond
successful
trauma, we
beyond the
thrive
trauma.
beyond their trauma. You know, we
Yes,
don't. The whole goal is to heal them so like that they can holistically
healing.
become healthy adults.
Yes,
Because we're 9 times out of 10 we're in that age range before 18, and we want to heal them as an adult so like that by the time they get to that adult level, they can move forward on their own. They know how they now identify that they have suffered a trauma. They now have identified everything that took place during the trauma outwardly from their behavior. We teach them coping skills on how to cope with, do like meditations and things like that, things that we know that they can do on their own when we're not around. Breathing techniques, like we also partner with different other organizations that teach them breathing techniques, coping skills, all of these
yes,
things in place. We try to wrap them around with as many resources as we can. If we don't have the resource here, we will navigate them to another resource that we are as trustable in the city of Camden to assist us with this child, and then other resources navigate us, back to us, and give us children too that they feel like we can assist them with, as well. So it's like a chain effect. But more importantly, it's like we're sitting in that middle of that chain effect, because like we wave some out and then we wave and then they wave some back in. So um
wow,
all the way around, the child gets wrapped around with services. And on top of it all, there is not a lot of trauma focused psychologists available in this area. We only have three trauma focused psychologists, which is a whole different curriculum than having just a regular psychologist. A psychologist is just basically there for normal, I want to say normal mental activities that's going on, maybe the panic attack, anxiety. They just diagnose and treat, giving you a prescription. You don't come back for a while. The trauma focused therapy psychologist goes deeper into that. It helps you identify what's going on, because people don't understand that even with trauma, the severity of the trauma, people go through identity crisis. It increases in alcohol abuse, drug abuse, sexual abuse, sexual desires, which children at a young age even go to jail as far as for rape. But when you go ahead and you dig into their records, you'll find out that they suffer some type of trauma that it brought out other diagnoses. So, and abnormal uses such as drug abuse. They go into trying to, self medicate, which opens another, treatment that they have to have. So we try to keep them away from having to go through all of that, or trying to experience all of those other outward things that come out of trauma that are pipeline to prison. As you know, my whole thing is to save one young life. The younger they are, I can save them, the better for me, because it's easier to repair a child than it is to repair an adult. So if we can, if we
absolutely.
if we can go ahead and just adjust the child, we will have a healthy adult.
I agree with that, and I'm glad that you guys take that. I want to go back to something here on the Simply Free Little Talk. As the host, Free Little, I don't want to assume anything there may be happening in other school districts in Texas that I'm just not aware of. I know that because of school shootings, they have systems in place to help them with trauma with those regards. But I'm speaking of the school systems that I'm aware of that are not addressing the children that have outside trauma incidents that come into the school system. And in the school systems, there is not a thing in place that says we can identify, because the parent has come to us and spoke with the counselor here in the school and shared, my child has experienced trauma, or they're going home every day and they don't have anyone to assist with homework or wash their clothes. They're living in a state of mind, conditions that are beyond what we did as children or what I grew up in. I came home to a stable environment. There are kids who are going home to uh, environments that are not stable, environments where there's no parents. There may be a grandparents or aunt or uncle. There's sexual abuse, so many things, and you've seen this yourself. So I love that you guys have a system in place to identify these children and a way of escape. You're providing that for them. So I thank you. I commend you guys at Saving Grace Ministry. But more importantly, you guys are identifying a way to save these kids so they can thrive beyond trauma, to be successful, productive citizens and not get caught up in the pipeline to prison. So thank you for this. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Free. We see so many children now here, especially children of color, go into the system. And I always, in my seminars, I talk to children. In another seminar that I have called Bully Me Not, I talk to the children on what is bullying, how to, forms of bullying and the consequences of bullying. And I always tell the, the children, like, if you're acting out at home before coming into contact, what's the initial incident? When you go down to the police department, the first thing that the parent is going to say is, I don't want nothing to do with this child. I'm tired. The child is acting out at home. The child is acting out at school. The child is not safe in its environment. The police department does away with that. Oh, okay. Well, then now from 3 charges we was about to add, we're going to add like 6 because, we could slam the book at them. And the parent's not going to care. And what kids don't know, that when they go into the juvenile justice system, they're adjudicated. That means they're not innocent or guilty. Whatever is said has been
Wow.
done, and whatever has been done is going to be basically consequences to it. So when they go in and they be adjudicated, sometimes the severity of it, they can either be in through a court process from 6 months up to a year, and either come out with different scenarios. Some of them need a higher level of care. Some of them go into incarceration. Some of them, it's all different outcomes, going probation with wraparound services on the outside. And then sometimes the wraparound services do not provide the service and leave them out there to basically have enough space to go ahead and create more crimes. And then now they have
Wow.
a crime on top of a crime. And a lot of children here in the city of Camden, because they experience so much crimes on a daily basis, like it's environmental trauma at its peak,
Environmental
that a
trauma.
lot of them
Wow.
feel like they need protection. So a lot of them walk around already with, armed guns or knives or anything that they could feel like they can go ahead and uh protect themselves at any point in time. I had a previous client. He had a father that basically had shot the mother, lined up the
Mm,
kids, shot the mother, shot himself. He died. The mother survived, but he blamed the mom for the dad wanting to shoot the mother and then killing
my.
himself. Then on top of that, to protect himself, he found a bullet casing on the city grounds, had that, and he had a contraband of marijuana in his pocket, which was just a bag of marijuana. Well, just because they had that in the school system found it in his locker, they called the police, took him down to the police station. This is a kid that suffered from severe trauma. They put him down at the
Wow.
police station, charged him with all these charges, and now he's currently doing 5 years. He's now have done 2 of those 5 years. So we just set him up for pipeline to prison and gave him adult life. I mean juvenile life, excuse me. So
This is
juvenile life
awful.
is anything as far. So we and then on top of that, when I talked to the commissioner of the juvenile justice system, she actually admitted that he's in there manic with no services. They have not provided no trauma focused therapy in there for him. They have not given him a trauma focused psychologist in there. He's basically undiagnosed and mistreated at this
Mm.
point. So
And
when
just
he
think
comes
there's
out in
so
five
many others like
years, we're just going to be back to square one again with him.
absolutely. I believe that that's so because if he's not receiving the proper treatment right now, I thank you for sharing that. We do have to prepare for our commercial break, but I am so glad that you're going to come back so that we can go into the interview with your life. You have an amazing journey that you've had to take in order to get to this. So you know firsthand a lot of what you're actually assisting other kids through. So that's what makes you so special. And again, the Simply Free Little Talk show commends you for the work that you're doing. You and Pastor Nizea with the Saving Grace Ministries. We want to give that information for so listeners. Stay tuned. We're going to return after commercial break. I want you to come back so that you can hear how you can also be an active participant. Donations are welcome at the Saving Grace Ministries in Camden, New Jersey. I do want individuals to know that they'll take financial donations. There's clothing that's needed. Hygiene bags are needed. Services that the youth need for this particular ministry, Saving Grace Ministries, to be able to continue the great work that it's doing right now. Wow, just hearing what you've said about the youth and then giving us the example, it just blows my mind. But again, stay tuned. We're going to go to commercial break and we'll be right back. Again, this is a Simply Free Little talk show that you've tuned into. And I am your host, Free Little, and I am sitting today with a queen for real, mobile queen. Janika is here and she is sharing the story of what's happening in Camden, New Jersey at Saving Grace Ministries. Thank you so much.
You're listening to TLSC Radio.
All
Keep
right,
it
welcome back to the Simply Free Little Talk
locked.
show. This is your host, Free Little. I am so excited again that we have heard so much great information from our guest in the studio today. But Mr. Nika is going to share more information with us concerning the trauma relief, but also what she has done and experienced her own personal traumatic life journey. But she is now so passionate about the things that she's able to do with the kids. So you are a mother of six and you're
Yep.
in Camden, New Jersey, helping other youth. You are a licensed nurse, LPN, since 2018. So kind of share your journey with us of what you experienced at the age of 2.5 years of age.
So remember I told you that I came in experiencing trauma. I was born
Exactly.
into trauma, born to two teenage parents, descendants of Puerto Rico and New York. And by the time I was 2.5 years old, I experienced being shot straight to my stomach by a 5 year old. The 5 year old is a twin boy. Um, one of the 5 year olds grabbed the handgun out of my mother's room. It was sitting on an iron board and came into the room where us as children were already playing cops and robbers and shot me. That's
Wow.
straight on, like literally looked at me in my eyes as he pulled the trigger of a 2020 excuse me, a 22 millimeter handgun. 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 22 millimeter hand
Wow. That right there is ooh, just a total shock to know that you see your 2.5-year-old shot in the stomach, not knowing if this child is going to live or die. But you had an encounter with God. Please
I
share.
did. My very first encounter with God was when my mother, she heard the gunshot go off, and she started hollering out for my name, and she came running up the steps and into the room, and there I was inside the kid's chair, a kitty chair, bleeding out. And I told her, I'm like, I'm right here. She saw the blood. She just unwrapped me, and she sat there and started running down the steps with me, screaming and hollering, telling people that she needed help. So the landlord that was there that she was talking to, he didn't want to help her. I guess he wanted to stay out of the situation. So she ran past him and started running in the middle of the street. And a guy that was riding by just so happened to be concerned about why she was screaming in the middle of the street with a 2.5-year-old child. And he stopped and asked her, "Do she need help?" And she said, yes, she needed a ride to the hospital. And he told her to get in. And when we got in, I quickly fainted. I passed out. My encounter with God comes in basically on the way to the hospital and going into surgery. I had an encounter with God. I want to say Jesus and two angels. It was two figures on the end, and then one figure of a man in the middle, like a mirror image, kind of like a smoke mirror image. You couldn't really see the actual like a skin complexion. It was just a smoking mirror kind of thing. And the first person, the angel, she says, "What are you doing here?" And I asked, I said, "Well, where am I?" And she says, "It doesn't matter. You're not supposed to be here." And I said, "But where am I?" And then the man in the middle said, "It doesn't matter. You have to go back." And like all this wind started rushing into my body. Like I felt like all this wind
Wow.
was like pressuring on my body. And I woke up to the sound of my mom calling me out of surgery. And I felt different at that time. Like at that point in time, I felt very like odd. I couldn't really explain it, but I really felt odd. And I tried to stand up so I could tell my mom, try to explain to my mom the encounter that I just had, but it wouldn't come out. So I just kept it a secret. And at that time, when I stood up, I basically loosened the stitches in my stomach, so I had to be put back down so they can fix it. And it took a month and a half for me to come out of the hospital. I came home on my actual birthday, June 23rd.
My. This is just another incredible story of faith at 2.5 years of age, being shot by a neighbor, a friend, someone who was not intentionally trying to harm you, however, was playing with a gun. And it could have been worse, but God is faithful, and I'm so glad. So this led you into other things during your childhood. What other things that you experienced during your childhood that was traumatic for you?
Free by the time, oh man, by the time I was 12 years old, I had experienced so much trauma from here to New Jersey to Camden, and Camden to Puerto Rico. It was like intense trauma. It was like reoccurring trauma. I experienced, just opening up that door to my sister being molested by my older cousin, and then his mother accusing me of lying and trying to hit me, after the accusation, to not knowing where my sister was, if she was safe or not, because at that point in time, we were separated, so I didn't even know if my sister was okay or not. I didn't see my sister come across the street. I was in a state of shock. I really couldn't even
Wow.
move or function after I told my mom that something was going on. I couldn't even tell her the scenario that I just witnessed. I just wanted her to go get her. So I stood stuck in a pause of just saying, mom, 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 mom. Like she literally had to shake me to basically tell her like, go get her. That's all I could get was like, go get her, and then she ran across the street and got my sister. But they didn't come back right away. And when they did come back, like my sister still wasn't there. And to be honest, I don't even know where my sister had went at that time. But I do remember his mother coming across the street with a broomstick trying to hit me, talking about that I was lying about what I just had witnessed. And then right after that, my uncle did go into jail. He did 5 years for shooting him for basically trying to get justice on behalf of me and my sister for what he had done to my sister. Then after that, I my mother, she had increased her drug abuse, and she was on drugs so bad that we had got sent away to Puerto Rico. In Puerto Rico, I had experienced a lot of abuse with my grandmother. She separated me and my sister so we won't be able to talk. She would give me smaller portions of food. She would sit us at the table and give me smaller portions of food than my sister, so I can realize that she really meant for evil. And she would give my sister snacks and everything. Free on the way on. I still remember when we got on the plane. Before we got on the plane that day, she took my sister to town and she bought her all of these clothes, took her to the salon, got her hair done. And my hair was snatted so bad. I had sliced so bad in my hair that if you shake it, it was like shaking an apple tree. A lot of lice fell out of my head. And I was so malnutrition that you could see the bones literally sticking out of my neck from how malnutrition I was. And every time I got on the phone with my mom to try to tell her what was going on, she would threaten me and tell me like if I told her, she won't never send me back. So I just endured the pain and and the treatment that I was taking up there, and it actually went very far. When I endured that for 2 years before I was brought back to United States, back down to Camden, and that day she just did anything she can intentionally to try to steal, harm, or hurt me before sending me back. She wanted to break me mentally, but not knowing that I've experienced so much trauma before this that nothing could hurt me more than what I was hurt. I already had reached a point of hurt that it didn't break me. So and plus I knew I was going home, so I didn't want to show no signs, no symptoms of fear or anything that would make her renege bringing us back, or take away my flight ticket to bringing me back. So I just endured pleasantly. I endured it pleasantly until we actually was on that plane. And to tell you the truth, free, I really had a mental breakdown at that point. Um, but just when I thought that all the trauma was over and done with, I of course got married. And just when things were going great, I had 4 children at the time, 3 boys, 1 girl. We decided to go as a family to the hotel pool, and my daughter experienced a near drowning. And that's when the second real encounter with God comes in.
Well, before you go into it, I just want to recap for the audience that's listening.
Hmm.
I tell you, this lady has experienced trauma. This is why she is phenomenal in her professional life at saving our young children. I love that she stated earlier today would thrive so that beyond trauma for their
Hmm.
success in life. And you have done just that yourself. From 2 years of 2.5 years of age, being shot by a neighbor, experiencing and witnessing your sister being raped, and from that, you also experienced being abused from your own biological grandmother, treating you differently than your sister, but also giving you less food portions. That's mental distress there. And it's also causing you to feel rejected and no love and so many other emotional things. So this is why you're able to be so effective in identifying youth. But now you're married, you have children, you're an older lady now, you've gone over that, you married, and your child, your daughter, nearly drowns. Tell us what happened from that point.
So, my daughter, I had gave her a lollipop and she went over to the poolside and laid down and started streaming it in the water, and the lollipop fell. So she reached in to try to get the lollipop. And when she reached in to try to get the lollipop, she fell in, hit her head, and went unconscious. So she was unconsciously drowning while we were looking for her. My son just so happened to go all the way up to the edge of the pool, and right there against the wall was my daughter drowning. And he dove in and got her out. And when he got her out, um, she was still breathing, but she was like snorkeling the water. She really was trying to gasp air that she couldn't receive at that time, and she fainted. she ended up falling out and fainting. And at that point in time was when I basically had started yelling out, "Do anybody know 911? Do anybody? I mean, excuse me, anybody know CPR? Anybody know CPR?" These two young gentlemen came over saying that they knew how to, do CPR. Once they did the first set of compressions, I had seen that she didn't have no rise and fall in the chest. So I was like, yeah, something is not right. I need to call 911. Once I got on 911 and the operator had came on, I had told the operator, like, can you please call everybody. Like, I need everybody to come right now. And I need everybody to come right now and assist me with my child. And she was like, okay, what's going on? I'm like, ma'am, you don't understand. Like, my child just drowned at the hospital, at the hotel. Like, she's on the ground. She's not responding. They're doing CPR. Ma'am, this is my only daughter. I need you to come right now. And she's trying to calm me down. And I'm like, listen, I'm not calming down until you tell me that somebody is on their way. So she started dispatching out the EMS, and of course, police officers was called, and people started running over to see what was going on. And EMS arrived, and they started to perform CPR to any life saving measures that they can. And the one EMS worker had told me that she was dead, and at the same time, a
My
lady had
Lord.
yelled out, "We need to call. We need to call God right now. We need to pray to God." At that point, my mind shifted from death to praying, and
My.
I just started going in prayer. I said, God, I need you to come right now. Matter of fact, that was the only prayer I learned in my first week of Bible study when I went to my first church. And they said we must call on God on the midst of our troubles, and He will be sure to come. So when the lady yelled at her, I
Come
said, "That's
on.
right." God said, "Call Him in the midst of our troubles, and He be sure to come." So I said, God, I need you to come right now. I need you to come right now. Don't do this to me in front of everybody. Don't you embarrass me like this and make me out
Ooh,
to be a
show up.
bad mother, God. You know I'm not that person. Don't do this to me right now. Why would you give me a daughter and take her back? Don't do this. I said to him, like, don't do this right now. The
That's
whole
all
time
right.
the monitor was showing up flat lines. They did have her hooked up to the monitor. They was basically showing me she was dead. The whole time I was praying, I'm praying to God, I'm crying, I'm hysterical. It's just me and God at this point. There's nobody else there. I didn't see nobody, I didn't hear nobody. It's just me and God. Once I finished praying, I said, please try one more time. The EMS worker looked at me and must have saw the sincerity of my prayer and said one more thing. He pulled something out of the bag and they tried one more thing. And sure enough, before it happened, I felt this strong wind blow by me. And mind you, this happened on July 8th
Come
of
on, wind of God.
2013. I felt this strong wind pass by me as he's performing a life saving measure. And then next thing you know, he turns around in a state of shock and says, "We got her." And then the EMS worker that had pronounced her dead has said, "We do got her. We do got her. Come on, hurry up, hurry up." So I was like, y'all got her, yeah, yeah. So they got her onto the stretcher and they raced onto the highway. And then this is true performance of miracle signs and wonders,
Wow.
because
Come
now
on.
when we get out on the highway, everything is blocked off. There is traffic for miles down the highway. The police officers literally already had the highways blocked off.
Mm,
They blocked off the highway. They raced her down to the hospital. They hooked her up to life support.
favor.
Me and my ex-husband gets there, and we talking to the social worker. She's asking us many questions. I'm hysterical. I can't believe this happened. My phone is on like 5%. The only person I was able to call was my mother-in-law, and be able to text everybody else, letting them know that something tragic just happened. Please put us in prayer. And now my phone dies, but this situation is now being carried by God. So, you
I
know,
love the way he carries it out.
yeah, so, my on the way to the hospital, my ex husband is like, "Oh, you all right? Why do I look like I was in panic?" I said, "Listen, I know my God got this under control." I said, "Did you not just see what I seen? Did you not just see that she went from flat line to lines?" I said, "God blew breath back inside of her. She is going
What
to
a
be
God we
okay."
serve.
So, from that moment forward, I kept my full faith in God. It was no wavering after that. Like, I knew for sure that God came full side. I remember calling one of my friends that was very into God, and she was very spiritual to God. She always tried to tell me about God growing up. And I called her and I said to her, said, "He's really real." And she's like, "Who is you talking about?" And she was like, "What are you saying? What are you talking about?" I said, "My daughter just drowned, and I saw God, blow breath back in her." And she was like, "What?" So she just started screaming, "Hallelujah, glory be to God! Oh my God, thank you for telling me this." And my true testimony, my immediate testimony to telling her that there really is a God. And I
Yes, it
went back in
is.
the
Yes, it
room,
is.
and from that moment forward, I just kept on, telling God, like, what, of course, is whatever's in your will, we have to let it be that way, Lord. And however you leave her here with me, I'll accept that. I just don't want her to leave. And then we went in for the report. The report, of course, gave us 24 hours for her to live. And I knew that that report wasn't the report that God had gave me out there at
Come
the
on.
poolside.
Not his report.
So, yeah, so I just left it alone. Like, okay. So 24 hours turned into 5 days. They did, of course,
Mm,
throw anything and everything they could at us, told us that she had a traumatic brain injury. I wasn't even worried about that. I didn't even know what a traumatic brain injury meant at that
mm,
time. I just knew that my daughter was alive. And 5 days later, she started breathing on her own again, and they woke her up
glory.
from being sedated. And I was able to hug and feel my daughter and embrace her, being so strong and waking up. So it
That is
definitely,
just beautiful.
it's
Beautiful
definitely
testimony.
still 10 years later, I'm still thanking God for what
Still
He has
grateful.
done.
So now, as a result of that 10 years ago, you now have the Saving One Young Life, where you provide children ages 5 and under with life jackets so that they would be safe when they're in the pool. And it's called from your foundation, Raw Jewels, which was founded in 2020. So I'm really glad that you have that and doing great works. But you currently work for another nonprofit organization or ministry called Saving Grace Ministries, where you're able to share your traumatic stories or glean from your traumatic stories to assist other children. So as we're closing, I really want you to go into what do you do at Saving Grace Ministries and how can we in the public assist you guys to continue your mission?
So at Saving Grace, I am the juvenile care coordinator and special needs advocate. Over at Saving Grace, I help appointed youth through anything and everything we call wraparound services due to trauma and mental impairment in children. I, assist the families with family dynamics at home, and collaboratively, me and of course the founder of Saving Grace Ministries, Nizia Easterlin. She's my sister. She's my travel partner. We do a lot of things together. Um,
Beautiful
you
lady.
know, we make sure that we go above and beyond and wrapping around services to the children. So she does the intake and I do the assessments, and then we move forward from there. But truth be told, we do this all out of pocket expenses, and of course, um, we run into all type of situations from uh, every night where we have services. We always try to give the children a hot meal. A lot of children here in the city of Camden go to bed hungry, don't know what a hot meal is. A lot of them, have non-perishable items that's probably given to them. Some of them don't have no dinners at night, the last dinner that meal they receive is at school lunch. So we try to give them that family style dinner with a hot food every night, or just treat them to pizza, whatever we can do. We try to make sure that we keep bullying to a minimum. So we try to provide them with any clothing that we possibly could get a hold of, or sneakers. We of course have to try to provide sometimes transportation for the children if we have the budget. So a lot of children miss therapy because we don't sometimes have, gas to go get them, or, just transportation in general to go get them. So it's a lot of different ways that anybody can assist. It'll be greatly appreciated. Toiletries, toothpaste, toothbrush, deodorants, underclothes. Man, it's definitely a need, because this is definitely a ministry that an assignment sent from God, and these children are me and I am them. So I'll go above and beyond
Love it.
for any capacity for them.
Again, Janika, thank you for coming on to the Simply Free Little Talk Show. Again, we're very honored that you're here and what you provided with us. But I want to say again, Saving Grace Ministries in Camden, New Jersey. Please look them up. Find a way that you can donate financially. She said toiletries. She mentioned clothing for males and females, juvenile youth. Come to them as a safe haven. This is their place of refuge, and they are providing meals, hot meals in the evenings, because a lot of the children that they provide services to, do not have a hot meal in the evenings. The last meal they may have even eaten is in school. So let's try to assist them as much as we can. Simply Free Little Talk audience, let's show some love. Look them up on Facebook. What other outlets can we find you guys on other than Facebook? I know we can look you up on Google.
Um, yes, it's Saving Grace Ministries on Facebook. It is Camden Saving Grace Ministries on IG, on Instagram.
Okay.
The website is, what is it? www dot Saving Grace Ministries inc.com. On the website, you can find all type of ways to give, gift cards for children that are improving. You know, we love to gift the children when they're, proving all the way around, to just keep them encouraged.
That's great.
So from it's all type of ways to give, the all type of ways to support. You can
Yes, it
always
is.
travel and come down to the office on a night that we have the children, and come, sit in person and actually view the work, that
Well,
we're
that's
doing
beautiful.
in the city of Camden as well.
Thank you so much for everything. So there you've heard it. This is all rooted from pain that is turned now into passion. Again, I want to thank my guests for coming on tonight, but more importantly, I want to thank the listeners, the faithful viewing, listening audience who tunes into Simply Free Little Talk to hear not only the host Free Little, but the guests that are here on the show providing great information. Do not forget Saving Grace Ministries in Camden, New Jersey. You can assist them in any kind of way that you can, financially, toiletries. They need it. The kids will appreciate it. Again, I thank you for tuning in. Thank you again, my special guest and the viewers tonight. Thank you. Remember, Saving Grace Ministries in Camden, New Jersey. Look them up on Facebook, look them up on IG, and begin your donations. We thank you. And thanks for tuning in. We'll see you
Thank you
again.
so much.
The Lounge Soul Cafe. Playing today's best music. Playing today's best music. Best music. Best music.